Okay, you want to start talking?
I certainly can. Hmm.
Mm. Hmm. Okay, yeah, we got audio. Okay, we're
Is it
going.
on?
Yeah.
Okay. Here I am learning how to do studio stuff. Uh, I really still learning. Got in late, my fault. We were working on. It was an odd situation. Hey Christina,
Yeah.
the dog chewing on the cord. Um, it's a puppy, Pyrenees puppy, meant to protect chickens. Um, so was happening is the outdoor faucet, frost proof. Every time you turn it on, it was spraying, hitting the floor, spraying out straight up, not down. But even if it had sprayed down, it bellied down into the plastic of the underpinning of this double wide mobile home and held a pond of water, which that moisture stood and held and got up against that moisture got it into the particle board. And so, like a 10-foot area by 5 foot 6 got ruined. The floor got ruined. So, I crawled underneath there, found out where the leak was, cut all the plastic out so it quit continuing to deteriorate the particle board, and then I went and turned in an estimate for her so she could turn it into the insurance company, which I thought it would take a while, but it wasn't. She was ready to go faster than I was. Anyway, I went over, and one day we replaced all the flooring, and it was stronger than it was to start with. And that was yesterday. And got all the materials. I keep forgetting, you have to allow for the time to go get materials, and it was quite a drive back in there. And then today we moved furniture, which was a lot of furniture, and uh, continued put floor leveler and level out the floor, and then started putting the floor covering in to replace the covering that was there. And boy, I cannot express my irritation, even though I've done more than a football field's worth of laminate floor and that type of flooring, life proof, whatever you want to call it, plastic all together. I'm good at it. I could make a living just doing that. My knees are just fine. I don't have any problems with it, but I don't like that laminate type stuff. Anyway, it caused some grief, but we still did probably um, 100 and something square feet, which they pay. I don't know, it's like $8 a square foot to do. Um, but I don't charge that. Anyway, I was trying to get as much as I could. I wanted to get done, but that didn't happen. So I knocked off, took my help home, which is my oldest son, Ty, and then made it back here, albeit slow. So, what I told you guys that I would talk about is what I was supposed to talk about last weekend. Instead, I talked about the death of a friend and kind of spent some time talking about him. And now I'm going to talk to you in brevity, and you can interrupt at any time. That's what this thing is for. It's not for a platform for me just to talk, but if you wish, there are any question at any time, it is not a problem for you just to ask a question. And it can be about any subject. That's what the purpose of this live stream is for. In the meantime, I will talk about whatever subjects that I feel like hasn't been covered or not recently. And one I haven't talked about is fencing and different types of fencing that you might use around the house. So one of them, which everybody sees a lot of, is the privacy fence. And there are a number of different heights of privacy fence. They are all generally on the affordable side, so they're made from wood 4x4 posts, even pressure treated. They only last maybe 10 years. You know, you're kind of pushing it at 10. If you get 15, you're doing really good. So where are the weaknesses in these type of fences? Well, you're starting with green wood, and that green wood, the the fencing, dog-eared or whatever, that fencing is generally thin, and the weather gets to it. I mean, it's kind of to be expected. That is up and down and is fastened to 2x4s, a lot of time with nails. I personally use screws just because I know that the screws are going to be there for a long time, and they don't come loose like nails do. Now, that height can be 6 foot. That height can be 8 foot. But you can also line it with 2x4s on the top and the sides. I've seen it where they do expiration. I think that's pretty cool. You know, and seen it where they have 2x6s on top. I would lay odds that those last a bit longer, not a lot longer, and I'm going to tell you why. I think every place has wind. I'm sure there's some place in the country that doesn't get much wind. I don't know where it is. When that wind blows through there and tests those 4x4s that hold that fence up, that's where we're going to have a weakness, is those 4x4s tend to rot off around the top of the ground, where it touches the ground. Even if you pour concrete, which most people do, around the posts, and it's in the name of doing a high quality job. I have seen people, and I have done it for them if they request it, take motor oil and paint the post with it, let the oil soak into those posts. And I don't have an answer for you whether or not they actually work doing that. It seems like it would make it last longer, but I don't know. But over and over again, I get work by fixing privacy fences that rotted off at the bottom. Is there a better way to do it? I think that the issue of water standing around the post is always, and the dirt holding it is always going to be an issue with wood posts. You could use steel posts. How long does steel work? Well, first of all, most of the time those steel posts that you buy for fencing are galvanized, and they will last quite a long time. Every bit as long as that wood, for sure. So I would think you would get more out of it with the galvanized posts that they make, for sure. I think you could do better with that. Or am I talking about the round post, or am I talking about the steel post? I'm talking about the steel square posts. They sometimes have a flange on one side and a post-like look on the other side. Now, I've also seen the galvanized posts, but I want to explain to you, those will last longer than a 4x4 wood post will. but they're not forever. If you have any idea of, because in my time I have fixed quite a few chain link fence posts, which are galvanized also, and guess where they rot out at? Same place. So they're thin steel generally. So the thicker the steel, the longer lasting it will be. Even still, I drive by a place on the way into Rogers, and along that used to be a horse farm, was a pipe fence welded, and the welding held mostly, but the fence was falling over. Guess where it rotted at? At the bottom where it touched the dirt. Well, was that galvanized? No, it was not. Those are steel pipes, usually thick steel pipes. But I'd lay you odds. I mean, if I go by memory, I guarantee you that pipe had been there for 30 years. So we're talking the difference between somewhere between 10 and 15 years with wood and 30 years with rusty steel pipes, thick steel pipe. If we're talking about galvanized pipe, we're talking longer, between 25, maybe. I don't think it will last as thicker steel or thicker galvanized steel. But I think that pipe would last longer than 4x4. Will it hold up to the wind? Again, the thicker it is, the stronger it is, the more it's going to hold up to wind. That's something to think about. And if you maintain, which everything requires maintenance, everything, there is no exception. I was talking about it today with roofing. Everybody thinks shingle roofs, well, they're good for 15 years, or you get a warranty. You get a warranty on the shingle if you can prove it was shingle's fault. Usually you're calling them because hail damage. Usually you're calling them because of wind damage. And the insurance is getting pretty high on that stuff if you guys have any experience with that. But you don't usually get warranty on the shingle. It does not cover labor. It covers the material. Everything requires maintenance. Fencing of all kinds require maintenance. Okay? So we're talking about privacy fence right now. What is it that you need to maintain? How about staining it? Instead of just letting it turn gray and rot away. Wind will then for sure take out pieces of it. Literally pop off and fall down, look dilapidated. I could take pictures, and you probably have seen them, where those old privacy fences have been neglected all those years, and somebody else bought the house and they're like, I'm not gonna fix it, or somebody's renting that house, they're I'm not gonna fix it. Nobody's staining it, nobody's making it last longer, and it will deteriorate quickly. So why don't you stain it after, let's say, 4 or 5 years? Stain it. You could do it quicker, but you can go to 4 or 5 years. Stain it. You can get any number. I went to Lowe's today. They have 3 5-gallon buckets of mist-tinted stain sealer for $50 a 5-gallon bucket. It should not be a price problem, because if you want it to last longer, your asset, you need to do the maintenance. That is, go out there and tighten the nails. Maybe just put screws in instead. So now, that's privacy fencing. Chain link fencing, that requires maintenance too. It is usually pretty pricey, and you can get it any number of heights, and you can get it where it faces at the top in at 6, 7 foot, 8 foot, 10 foot, in or out, with barbed wire to stop people from getting in. So that is an art all itself. Chain link fence is. It's quite it's pretty good skill. I mean, you can literally tighten the chain link itself so much that it literally gets thinner in the middle. How do I know that? Because I've done it. Uh, but you can put a chain link fence up in places you would not believe. Down a really steep hillside, over a bluff line. You can do some pretty wild stuff with chain link fence, and it looks pretty cool. You can get your chain link fence with colors. You may not know that.
I didn't know that.
You can get it in black. You can get it in green. You can get it in white. You can also get little pieces of metal that fill in with green or white or black, and then people can't see through it. You might consider doing that, but all that requires maintenance also. So if you're going to go that route, those are things you can think about. I personally think that a chain link fence is pretty cool. I talked to a guy who was a thief for quite a while, and you can learn from anybody. And he was talking. He was long since convinced not to do that no more. He had went to Crossbar College enough that he didn't want to do that no more. One of the things he told me was, whenever somebody puts a privacy fence up around their house, I always thought there was something valuable in that house. And so did everybody else that I knew that broke into houses. So we just wait till they leave and know full well that nobody can see us while we're breaking into the house because there's a privacy fence all the way around it. Or I go through the window where the privacy fence is. And I know they got something to hide because they got a privacy fence all the way around the house sometimes. That's the ones I really look for. I never even thought about that. But if you have a chain link fence, you can make it high and they can climb over, but everybody can see them doing something. We have cameras and all that, but they know how to get around cameras once they find out where they're at. They literally will steal cameras, by the way. So anyway, when you think about a chain link fence as opposed to a privacy fence, you might consider that a chain link fence will hold up better to high winds, which in this area is the northwest corner of Arkansas, which is close to Oklahoma, which is close to Missouri, which is close to Kansas.
Tornado Alley.
It's on the edge of Tornado Alley. We get, according to the internet, which I don't know if anything the internet says is totally accurate, but according to the internet, no, I cannot disagree. We get 4 90-mile-an-hour episodes every 3 years. I can tell you there's a whole lot of 60-mile-an-hour episodes. Whole lot. When you have a privacy fence, it's catching a lot of wind and they will break. Consider that. Chain link fence generally doesn't get damaged by winds unless it tears a limb out and drops it on the chain link fence. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. So those are things to consider. You might have a need for privacy in your backyard or anything, even in your front yard. You might just want a big privacy fence, and there are a lot of choices when it comes to that. And there are a lot of choices when it comes to chain link fence too. But there's a lot of other fences besides chain link and wood privacy fence. There are rock fences. Now, I personally have worked on building rock walls, they would call it, and fencing back in the day. You were picking up rocks to make where you could till your garden or have a field where you could drag it and make hay. You stacked up rocks and you just like, we're going to make a wall. There is literally an art to building a rock wall. And I have seen it last for 100 years. You take some skill to make it that way. But I'm telling you, I've been through the woods where trees were 12 inches thick growing through it because it was built when it wasn't there and the tree was beside it and it just grew through it. 3 foot thick. And that rock wall is still there. It's a true art form. And it's using the circumstances that you have. Might consider that. And you can do that in conjunction with a block wall and put the rock on it. But a block wall requires a footing. Is a block wall going to last a long, long time? I would suggest yes. But time and time again, where I see the mistakes on longevity for a block wall is the rain comes down on top. You say a block wall for a subdivision. If you'll look and you'll start seeing cracks and busting and everything, it's not always because it's settling. A lot of times it's because water comes in, soaks through the top, goes down into the block, and then freezes when it gets cold. So that in the wintertime, whenever the snow is there, it melts down into the block and it turns dark gray, and then at nighttime, that moisture that's gotten into that block freezes and causes cracks. It literally busts any kind of coating, maybe plaster or synthetic coating that they put on there. It will knock it off. And I see it on block walls of all types, even on buildings. If they don't keep that top from getting water in it, it will start deteriorating the block wall in a probably 15-20 year period. And it really, that 15-20 year period requires a footing that's substantial also. And yes, you're spending some money now. We're getting to a whole nother budget when we talk about a rock wall or a block wall. Are there others? Yes, for sure. One might consider poured concrete walls, and I've been involved with that. Quite often in Florida, I was working with an older man who he was known to be a good plaster, which was a dying trade then. Probably still very near death, but still dying, is plaster on block walls. Did a lot of that in Florida, Central Florida. When we made decorative like crown mold and decorative trim that goes around the columns and stuff like that. You can do a lot to make your house look really, really nice. And a lot of those houses in Miami have block or poured concrete walls that I believe could stand up to a storm surge pretty good. They are made very, very well. They have rebar in the block, everything. You can do that. And it just costs more money. It takes another type of skill that you're not going to find in a regular fencing. Is that the only thing? No. There is a lot of really neat wood fencing that I've seen just recently that run side to side and different thicknesses. Even on the same wall, running this way instead of up and down. I thought that's pretty cool. And I've been keeping an eye on it for at least 6 years. I've seen them, and they seem to be holding up pretty good. Again, wood tries to go back to the way it was on that tree, which is not straight and which is not square. It tries to be round again. It tries to do things. So yes, they have to go back and fix. Most of the time, those people that spend the money on a nice looking wall going from side to side with the wood, they usually take a lot of trouble to stain it, seal it, and maintain it, because those are quite a bit more expensive. And I've seen it where they do a herringbone also. That's where they meet in the center at angles, 45-degree angles. Those are pretty elaborate and pretty fancy also. So you can get a lot of different wood fencing. My favorite is the picket fence. And I don't know. There's something about working on a picket fence. It is therapeutic for sure. I like messing around with picket fences. They are. I've done a few that are rounded down and then back up, and then I chamfered the 4x4 posts. Put lights in the post on the corner. Put rounded tops. What they call lathe rounded tops on them with a bottom for it, and just really get fancy with them and paint them with bright white paint, and if you keep it up, they'll last quite a while. I don't know that they require no maintenance. I've had to fix a couple of them, and I had to put in steel to keep, again, where that 4x4 goes in the ground, it rots off right there. So I put in some steel on the backside and allowed it and drilled holes to keep it stiff for another 10, 15 years. And the lights on the corners, man, that really makes you can get decorative lights or motion detection lights, but usually decorative lights. And then an arbor. I have seen people pay ridiculous amounts for arbors that were just displays in stores at auctions, way beyond what it was worth. But nobody knew where to get it. It's definitely a pretty and delicate look. It is my favorite of all the fencing out there. I really prefer the picket fence. 3.5 inch, I think, lasts longer than the 2 inch styles. So, I like the picket fence. I have also worked on wrought iron fencing. And that stuff, if you maintain that, I've seen it that was at least 80 years old and still going strong. I mean, trees fall on it and still tends to stay together. You can weld cast iron, by the way. It's a nickel. I believe it has nickel in the welding rod. And I've been involved with fixing. I remember a lowrider took out a gas station I used to do work for. It took out the cast iron top that has entry to go into the concrete, into the tank. And it was so low he hit it and broke it. So we had to take it off, and of course you didn't want to weld it there, and grind it down and buy some special rods and weld it. So yes, you can weld the wrought iron fencing, and I really think those are pretty also. And I really don't know the price on those. I'll bet they're very expensive. I would lay you odds, exceptionally expensive.
They can be really elaborate too.
Yeah, they can be really stark and simple, and then they can have all kinds of leaves and flowers in them. I mean, I've been to a lot of places in the name of being a tourist and seen some beautiful fencing in wrought iron. I'm not really tied to making those. I don't even know where you go to get them, but I have and they have metal fencing that they sell at Lowe's. I have been involved with that. Done it for handrails going up on a deck, and then on the deck.
We have a playlist of wrought iron.
Do we?
Yeah, that you did for a doctor's office, I think.
Yeah. And I've done it for a radio station and a couple other people that you can buy the it's not really wrought iron, it's metal fencing that Lowe's. It's decorative fencing. Not nearly as strong, but it's still going to last a long, long time. They have brackets that fasten to concrete, and so on, or to a deck. I've been involved with putting wiring in them so that they can have lights in the handrails, which you can do that with wood also. Uh, I was involved with one where they actually had we had to router out the bottom of the handrail so that we could put in lighting that changed colors if they wanted it to. That glowed, made the deck glow. So there's a lot of things you can do for lighting to accentuate, and you can be the lighting outside shining on different colors on your fence, or inside for your own viewpoint. And those things really, really look fantastic. So you might consider some. Now the lighting is far more inexpensive, and you can get it solar. I saw today. It was on his fence. He had some glow, solar driven address lights on his fence. That was kind of cool. So, and of course, what you put on your fence, there's a number of things you can do about that. You can put your bird feeders. You can put particularly outdoor lights, but don't forget about your address, where you can make a pretty elaborate address for your home right there. And now all the solar driven lights, that address can be lit up at night. And that's pretty cool. I think that's a lot of fun to be involved with too, or even to own. So I think that you might consider lighting as part of your fencing, because that looks really good at night. It might look better at night than it might during the day. And it really doesn't cost that much, unless you have somebody putting wiring in the ground. It's going to cost you some, but man, you get a lot of bang for your buck. So, those are ones that come off the top of my head. I believe that you can also start looking at, believe it or not, I've seen cordwood fencing. I don't believe it had concrete and sawed wood, but I don't know that I would consider that as long lasting, unless you seal it up really well and keep sealing it up as it dries out. I've seen poured concrete walls with glass bottles in it. That's something so similar to solar houses that they do, where they want the sun to hit those glass bottles and keep heat in them. Even cold times, it's in there. But it looks really good when you got green and blue bottles, and in that wall also. And it's a number of things out there that I've seen people make pretty elaborate fencing out of boulders that they had hauled in. But that's on the high side. You're bringing in cranes and you might want to consider doing. I mean, I've also worked at Universal Studios where they made fencing out of. They made it look like boulders, but it was actually made out of plaster or gunite that was wrapped around rebar that was bent to make it look like a boulder. So it kind of guided you around a ride entrance so that they could bring in maintenance to the gift shop or whatever, and not have to go through the crowds that are in there after they get off a ride. So there's a lot of times you'll go to these places and you can do the same. And I've actually seen it on some of your higher end houses, where you can make a boulder out of lath and rebar and then putting plaster on it and gunite. But again, that requires a little bit of a skill to make it look like a boulder. It'll have different shades of gray or different shades of orange and brown and dark brown. So it's kind of a neat project. I've always wanted to do that because I used to watch those guys when I worked at Universal Studios and MGM and Splash Mountain in Epcot. I believe it was Epcot. But all those different places, I saw a lot of work going on, and it was always that was one of those things. I thought, wow, it's really cool. I could have boulders around my house. People like, how in the world did that guy bring those boulders in? And they can make them look, old and weather stained. So you might consider doing that. And I have seen around here people do the vinyl three board fence, and I I have my questions about how long they last because I see them falling apart all the time. Because the glue that they put them together with, they pull apart. They also the wood inside the plastic rots out. But if you maintain them, I believe those would last a long time. Also, probably 20, 25 years. They look really cool. It looks like a horse, a really nice horse fence, and that's not a bad choice. A three board fence with creosote. I don't know where you get creosote now. They kind of got onto that as not being good for the environment. But creosote fence in Florida is a totally acceptable way of making a fence. So you might consider a three board fence as something. Those posts are usually round. They're not and dark colored, but they could be any number of colors like white, which I've seen several times. But a three board fence usually has like a 1x6 or a 1x8 width, and they accentuate hard. And you can put a fence up and then put the like 2x4 or even 4x4 like horse fence, and then put that over it, and it hold in your dogs and look really good. Um, there's a guy that I've worked for quite a bit. He has a block fence, and then he put steel at the top to keep the dogs from jumping. He had some big German shepherds, and he was keeping the dogs from jumping over. That looked kind of neat, though. It looked like he meant to do it, and it was a neat idea. So those are all things that you could think about, and believe me, there are much, much more. I've seen rail fences. Now, there is a long gone art. Rail fences, mind you. I actually go by a Civil War uh, reenactment place here, and it's actually a commemorative or a memorial to a Civil War here, just a few miles from my house. One of the largest contiguously owned battlefields is here in the Pea Ridge battlefield, and it has quite a few rail fences. And guess what? I got to meet some of the kids who worked on making rail. So what you do to make rail is you use uh, it's the same chisels that you use to split wood. You use to split the logs long ways, and it has to be logs that are going to stand up to test of time. But even still, those rot also. Those are neat. They look pretty cool, and I guess they would keep cows in as long as the cow wasn't really determined. I've known some cattle that are pretty determined, and they're going to get over just about any kind of fence. Um,
There's some bulls you're not going to keep behind a fence.
no, and they'll just keep traveling down from one county to another. Uh, but a rail fence is, if you got an older look to your house, it's a pretty neat idea. But believe me, there's some work to that, and there will be maintenance. You can spray it with different kinds of linseed oil or things like that. It might make it last longer. Um, there's been some rail fence that last a long, long time, but I don't know about no 40 years or 30 years. I think closer to 15 or 20, as long as people are not climbing and sitting on it. Uh, Believe me, I was raised around that. Early on, there was quite a few rail fences where I was raised over in the woods. Uh, then you got just plain old uh, wire fencing. It can be 2x4, which is 2 inches wide, 4 inches long. It can be 4x4, And again, you're using round posts generally. You can use 4x4s. Uh, you can put a piece of wood across the top, or you can leave it. I had a guy that went to a lot of trouble to explain he wanted his fence to be about 5 foot, and he did not want any wood across the top. He did not want it where the posts were all the way to the top. And he finally said, "Do you want to know why?" I said, "Sure, you can tell me why. I'm going to do what you tell me to anyway." He says, "Well, it's hard to climb over a fence that's like 5 foot high, and there's nothing for you to put your weight on. It's going to hurt." Oh, okay. And he was talking about welded steel fence. Now, not your typical 4x4 or 2x4, but he was talking about a welded steel, and you can buy those in panels, sort of like what do they call those, cattle panels? And he was having it put with T-posts, so I did that for him, and I never went back to see if he was having any problems with people breaking in. He got chemically poisoned. He was really having a lot of mental struggles along the way. Uh, Quite a journey with him, but I still learned something. Yes, it would be hard to climb over that cattle panel. It certainly would be. You could climb it, but at the top, you're going to have to figure out how to get over. Really couldn't. You find it hard to put even a ladder against it, but if you did, you still got to get back over it. So it would be harder to do. That might be something you consider also. Um, I will tell you a funny one. The guy that I'm buying the mobile home park from, uh, he was always providing refrigerators. So he's always in the hunt for refrigerators and stoves and all that stuff. And I was working for some people around the neighborhood, a little ways away, and he's like, "Oh, you're into hauling off scrap iron, are you?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, this used to be Mr. Jones's house, and you know what kind of fence I got?" And it's like, "No." He says, "I got a whole line of refrigerators and stoves. They're one against the other." I said, "How old are they?" He says, "Well, some of them are from the 50s." I was like, "Wow." As he showed it to me, there were trees growing around these refrigerators. So he took what he had and made a fence out of it. Literally kept cattle in and calves and stuff like that, because he was raising calves. That's not far from me, but he literally made a fence out of refrigerators and stoves because he had so many. I don't recommend that, but I mean it is function. And you can go out there and take parts off of them, I guess. I know that the porcelain lasts a long, long time. Anyway, he also used to use those refrigerators and stoves. Say he was going to pour concrete porch. His daughter, who I'm very proud to know, told me that every one of these looks like a big poured solid concrete porch on these homes that he put around here. They got refrigerators in them. They got stoves in them. And whatever else he could find, and threw it inside the forms, not right up against the outside edge where they could show. That way he didn't have to spend so much money on concrete. And I can tell you, there's not a one of them that fell apart. Concrete's good for 80 years, and then it starts deteriorating. So, there's more than one way to use a water heater, stove, and refrigerator. So you might consider doing that if you've got access to a lot of them. But I think you could probably take and scrap them. Let's see. I think that pretty much covers a lot of different ones. I've seen people make steel fencing, welded steel. They use drill stem, which is smaller, and then the 3-inch or 2-inch pipe welded steel. Those can really look pretty fancy. They again are in the 3 board fence area. Generally, you got to have some skill welding, but you certainly can make some really nice looking fence that will hold up to a lot. And you can put, the 4x4 or 2x4 fencing tied to it. So that might be something you might consider also. And a lot of times they don't even paint them, but I think they look better and probably last longer painted. So there's that fence also. And I bet you guys can come up with more ways than that. But I'm kind of running out of steam. I'm probably just imperfect and don't know enough about all types of fencing. I just had experience with the ones that I've talked about, including welding steel fence. So I hope I've left you with something to think about, and you can always share with me what you think about it. And I hope to talk to you guys another time, say next Wednesday, and also be on TikTok tomorrow at 10 o'clock live stream. Got any questions? You're always welcome to come on, interrupt me at any point, and we'll talk about what you want to talk about.